Let's talk about external development trends, and we have from Amber, Catalin and Mihai. Go for it, guys.
Good morning. Thank you, Oscar. Good morning, everyone. And first of all, thank you for joining us at this hour after the party. Much appreciated. So let's start today. Let's kick things off with a chat. So Amber is an external development company. We do services, including full game development and any custom game development service for large developers and publishers. And we've been on the market for 10 plus years now. And it's my pleasure today to discuss with Mihai, who is our founder and executive chairman, and just kind of take a look at what 2023 has been like now that it's behind us, and what it meant especially for the external development, and what are the trends that we can look for during 2024. Mihai, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. We're actually taking bets whether we'll have more than 2 people in the room at this early hour. So, thank you. You're my heroes. Thank you for being here. External development in 2024. Clearly, the market will be in better shape than 2023 because 2023 was so dreadful. There was a massive pullback in 2023 in terms of external development spending. Obviously, most of the large companies have had layoffs. They optimize for profit. One of the first casualties were the external development tracks. So, it's always a tale of 2 cities. On one hand, full game development, especially on mobile, but also on HD to a lesser extent, was broadly affected. It was super hard to find a publishing deal if you're an indie developer. And even if you're an established studio of a certain size, it was difficult to get into that kind of relationship. However, co-development continued, and services were relatively unabated. So companies that already had existing work streams with large publishers did relatively okay on the services side. So I mean, art, quality assurance, localization, those continued pretty well. Looking at 2024, what do we expect? First of all, increased investment in external development in mobile, albeit to still historically low standards. That's what I would expect to see. More mobile XDev deals will be on the market, but still in a relatively scarce environment. HD will continue to improve on full game dev. I think large publishers will find that they need more content. They have trimmed their slates in 2023, and I think they actually need to fill in some gaps. So I think that's really good news if you're an indie developer. And generally, I sense an overall improvement. Just looking at the pipeline of Amber, the start of the year was significantly better than how a historical January looks like. And I think the main reason for that is that as companies withheld investment in 2023, they have actually pushed their budgets into 2024. Many different companies have actually followed the calendar year. So in January, they had increased funding to invest in external development and accelerate their own deployment plans with their slates. So overall, broadly, this is how we're seeing 2024.
So you touched on a bunch of things here, and let's maybe dive deeper into some of these. So obviously, a very unfortunate and big topic during 2023 were layoffs that happened at a wide scale across the industry and even outside the industry. And unfortunately, this continued in 2024 with large numbers being announced just in the last couple of weeks. So how do you feel about this? Are those numbers accurate, or is it sort of the tip of the iceberg kind of thing? And how do you see this trend evolving in 2024? from this point?
So, great question. And you already alluded to my answer when you said the tip of the iceberg. Yeah, most of companies do not announce layoffs unless they're compelled by some reason, so local labor laws or the fact that they're publicly listed companies. In 2023, we had 13,000 announced layoffs. If I were to bet, I would guess that this is actually just a tenth of the overall number of layoffs in games. And I think the most affected entities were indie game studios, who basically ran out of funding, found it exceedingly difficult in 2023 to raise money to continue development on their games. So they had to retreat. And I think that is bound to continue through H1. The first half of the year is going to be extremely tough. Even here at the conference, talking to indies, I hear a lot that, I have 2 or 3 months of runway, and I'm really looking for a co-development deal or partnership. And in this scarcity environment, it's exceedingly difficult to kind of turn around an indie studio in that condition. So. Yeah, first half of the year, pretty tough environment, especially for indies, but I do expect and sincerely hope the second half will be much better.
So, but there's an interesting thing to discuss here. So, obviously, a lot of bigger companies are reducing their staff after presumably over-investing in during COVID years, and there are a few things that are happening. So, post-pandemic, remote work is now a thing. There's been discussions, tons of discussions about this. But it kind of looks like at least hybrid work is here to stay, so there are some things happening within the talent space. Speaking of talent space, there is something that we see, especially in the last year, where we have a bunch of talent marketplaces that have come up. So these are platforms, websites that facilitate freelancers getting work from companies, or even companies, services companies setting up their staff on such platforms so that their clients can pick up resources from there. What's your take on this trend?
Well, first of all, game developers are, by and large, unhappy to return to the office. The latest results of the game developer survey showed that the vast majority would prefer to work remotely. I think there are companies that are trying to swim against this trend and calling people back to the office at least a small number of days. I'm personally very much in favor of working in the office, but it also needs to make sense. Sometimes in many cities around the world, the commute is extremely taxing. Can take people upwards of a couple of hours per day to commute to and from home. And that starts not to make sense in an environment where you can be equally productive, just staying at home and using those hours for a better purpose, like making games, as opposed to just commuting. So partly as a result of this trend, working remotely, people are a lot more open to freelancing. So what I'm seeing, what I think is going to happen over the next year in the games industry is that we will adopt an employment model that is more akin to the film industry, where it's very much project-based. You're making really good money, let's say above average to current salaries if you're engaged with a project, and then you'll probably have a downtime between projects where you can work on your personal stuff or take vacation, and then you'll sign up to a new project. So this is much more akin to a contractual model. I think it will work better for the entire industry because it's more honest. Right now what happens is that when a large studio finishes a project, there are massive layoffs in the studio, even though the core premise of employment is a full-time, indefinite engagement, right? And that actually doesn't happen in practice. So avoiding the layoff scenario, having a more clear understanding of how you interact with the company, and also having flexibility in terms of how you parcel out your time investment. You can, as a freelancer, you make your own schedule. You can have part-time engagements with several companies, depending on your interests and skills. And so I believe this will become the dominant model in games in the years to come.
And what about so for freelancers it's clear, but what about companies themselves, services companies using talent marketplaces to basically sell their services?
Yeah, it's not something limited to service companies. Obviously, they will be leveraging networks of freelancers as well. But all creative studios, all service organizations, and even publishers will be increasingly leveraging this model because it provides flexibility and it meets all business demands.
All right, let's switch gears for a second, and it's impossible to have any panel in the beginning of 2024 without talking about AI. So let's just check that off the list. So obviously the hot trend of 2023. Lots of talk about how this will impact the games industry. Some people are considering it, are looking at it as a tool. Others are looking at it as a threat that will, kill jobs. There's a specific example where, if we look at Keywords, which is like the poster company for services, their stock has been affected during last year because, fears of how AI will impact the services industry. Your take on this for 2024?
There was quite a bit of speculation whether AI contributed to the wave of layoffs that we've seen last year. I personally don't think that's the culprit. There are other forces at play in optimizing for profit, the inability to raise money, a general retreat from external development. All of these factors contributed, and AI, I think, was a marginal influence on that. However, you kind of mentioned the dichotomy between seeing AI as a threat and seeing it as a tool. I think AI is here to stay. It has been used in games for such a long time, and as you very well know, programmers have been using generative AI to create code for quite a few years now, and it's broadly used across the industry to generate concept art today. And I think in the next couple of years, we'll see the advent of generative 3D models. So where out of a prompt, you can create full 3D environments. It's already getting there, not quite ready for prime time, so to speak, but making progress. I think as an industry, we have and we will always embrace technology and its evolution over time. And I think one of the really cool things about games is that it always been at the forefront of this innovation. It always pushed hardware specs. It always leveraged the latest advances in engine technology, and we will continue to do so. We're extremely adaptable and flexible and creative about using technology for creative ends.
Do you think services, companies that offer services are by nature more susceptible to being disrupted by AI, or not really?
I do believe there will be an impact especially in production of art. Currently, art production is extremely resource intensive and expensive. So I think over time, your personal creativity and specialization will matter more because some of the rote tasks involved with creating art will be freed up by the use of technology. And, we broadly call that AI, but it can be many other ways to create assets in generative or procedural fashion.
Cool. So, okay, AI
here to
stay, and that topic checked off our list. Switching gears again. So, one thing about services companies, such companies simply by nature tend to come up a lot in emerging markets, and Amber is very hot about being present in emerging markets itself. We as a company we were born in Romania. So a couple of questions on this. How were these markets, we know how they were affected, but how do you think these markets will evolve in 2024? What's your take on that?
I think the broad trend over the last couple of decades has been towards democratizing the games industry by extending all over the world. I mean, there is game development in almost every country around the world today, and I think that's really wonderful because it allows for full creative expression in the global community. There are obviously very big differences in the quality and the specialization of the developers. The Western markets, so broadly Western Europe, US, Canada, Japan, Korea, they're very mature markets, whereas, other parts of the world are still emerging from a game development expertise standpoint. I think generally external development and outsourcing companies have been compelled to look at emerging markets in order to lower costs, which is an important consideration when engaging with a partner, with a publisher or another studio. They definitely would like to have as low of a cost as possible for a quality service. So, companies like yours that you have mentioned have been extremely aggressive about expanding in places like Eastern Europe and China and Southeast Asia. And they have a really broad footprint there. I would say that on par, emerging markets have been more affected than the traditional game dev markets, partly because of the retreat in external development hits them directly, so they're less likely to employ people in those territories. But I also think emerging markets will recover really fast. When demand again shows up, they do have a competitive advantage in the availability of talent and the lower cost base. So that will matter a lot.
Thank you. And we're close to time, so just 2-3 quick predictions for 2024 in terms of external development and the industry in general.
I've already alluded to one, which is I expect a lot more external development activity in the mobile sector as publishers are finally getting to terms with the new environment that they're playing in, and figuring out creative ways to overcome the challenges of IDFA. And so, and also I believe we will see a lot more activity around alternative distribution methods on mobile. Such as setting up web shops and transacting on the web and having cross-platform experiences that monetize primarily on the web to kind of circumvent the Apple and Google monetization rules. And also what I'm predicting is that the second half of the year will be a return to normal. I think the trends are really positive. Despite the layoffs, I think we are going to exhaust the layoff scenarios in the first half of the year, and the second half of the year, the industry will return to growth. Yay.
Thank you.
Obviously, opportunity for questions here, but I just wanted to add to that. I think it's interesting the principle you're talking about with the movement to more of a Hollywood style, like separation of having to have the team internally versus not. That's a really interesting one, and we're particularly looking at that as somebody who's been doing publishing, where we're offering contracted publishing services increasingly, and we're offering a lot of the sort of startup consultancy stuff for expertise that teams used to think they need to have in-house, but now can't justify. So I think I kind of with you on that one entirely. Does anyone else have any comments or thoughts they want to ask? Any questions? People are still recovering from karaoke. Oh, was there one there?
We have a question there.
Come in.
I was just wondering about your experience with trying Gen AI for your services so far.
Yeah, so we actually experimented with combining a few frameworks to create 3D model generation. It's called Jenny. We've actually kind of released it and open sourced everything that we did, created a webinar to explain how we went about it. And so we have quite a bit of experience in that area, and we plan to continue to experiment and hopefully contribute to evolving the technology, because I think it's really useful and it will transform game development. You will really not need hundreds of people to create a AAA experience if you have generative AI for your 3D assets. Also, in terms of test automation, we've been using bots for many, many years. So before it was really cool, we were using it to test edge conditions on maps and detect crashes and freezes. That's really not exciting, but it was very useful, and it generated ample improvement in the test process for us. So broadly, those are the two areas that we are looking at, but specifically on certain games, we are deploying procedural generation of content, and this is especially useful in live operations.
All right, I think
we're done then. Okay, so I thought you were about to make an added comment to that. Yeah.
Good.
So on that note, thank you very much. I think it's really interesting, you know, the optimistic view. I mean, the thing I'm finding interesting, in fact, I was just talking to my friend Albert a few seconds ago, the number of teams that are coming out post-redundancy who have already started pulling together teams. And I think we're in the same situation where we're in about sort of 2011, which is the last sort of downturn I remember, where teams like, I don't know, Supercell started to turn around and become, and I think we'll see the next Supercells, the next things coming out of this downturn, in my opinion. But anyway, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.